Once upon the golden days, back in 1973, the Golden Mile complex was born. Having three fathers, she was delicately designed by Singapore's local architects, Mr. William Lim, Mr. Tay Keng Soon, and Mr. Gang In Un. She was like no other, a brute in the midst of developing Singapore. Golden Mile, formerly known as Woh Hup Complex, was a bold and idealistic vision for urban redevelopment in Singapore, being one of the first large-scale mixed-use developments. Tag along with me on my journey as we learn more about the architectural history of Golden Mile.
I think the key thing it meant for Singapore, GMC meant for Singapore in the 1970s was the whole idea of how a city can be revitalized, a city that doesn't have only one function, that is shops, but in this case, offices, shops, and residential coexist together. And it creates a vibrancy. It also creates, I suppose, the whole idea of work, live, and play as a kind of concept for living the city. If you talk about success, it is an interesting story back in the 70s, whereby if you must see the whole larger context of what they were trying to achieve in the Beach Road there. It was trying to, in a way, an extension of the CBD, right? A vibrant city. And when GMC was built, it was partly was in response to the sea, the housing, and partly it's also in response to the housing environment behind, where you see the Beach Road and the HDB flats. It is also a success in terms of how it has evolved over time to what it is today, to create a very distinct identity. I suppose during that period of time in the 80s and the 90s, there were also migrant workers from Thailand who comes in to work, and that becomes a kind of a gateway. And naturally, of course, with Thai tourists and Thai migrant workers, naturally the shops will also begin to cater for them.
978แล้วเข้ามาทัวริสต์คือซื้อของสิงคโปร์ไปขายเมืองไทยซื้อของเมืองไทยเข้ามาขายในสิงคโปร์แล้วตอนนี้ก็ค่อยดูตลาดเพราะว่า Golden Mile เมื่อก่อนนะคะจะเป็นร้านคนจีนเยอะและปัจจุบันที่ร้านนี้คือเป็นร้านหมอยาจีนเป็นร้านฝังเข็มนะคะแล้วอันนี้เขาก็มาแบบว่าเราก็มาดูลาดราวประมาณปีหรือ2ปีมาดูลาดราวว่าตอนนี้พอมาดูปีหรือ2ปีมีคนไทยขึ้นเยอะๆมีคนไทยขึ้นเยอะๆแล้วก็คิดว่าอยากจะมาเปิดร้านขายของไทยนะคะอยากมาเปิดร้านของไทยแล้วก็คิดดูหาดูร้าน
So, is all really gold? If Golden Mile Complex was of such significance to Singapore, what caused it to deteriorate so much? Why did no one prevent this? Barely a shell of its former self, it now struggles with multiple structural and rental issues. Many of these issues stem from the strata title ownership that Golden Mile Complex is under, causing tensions with maintenance. This results in cracked floors, leaking ceilings, and mossy pipes. Not only so, the small alleyways within Golden Mile Complex make it extremely difficult for any construction or renovation works to take place. The terrace structure, as cool as it may seem, is the prime spot to accumulate rubbish when tenants above absent-mindedly throw out trash. However, all this aside, it still stands as one of the most iconic buildings in Singapore today.
I think it's most commonly known as the typewriter. It's really known to be this brutalist icon in Singapore that has stood the test of time for about 40 years. So it was the first building that tried to inject this mixed-use typology, rather than it being a residential or it being like a community by itself. The architects at that time wanted to sort of like bring these two users together. So back then at that time, there was this, modernism is famous for this thing called form follows function. Sort of like a part of tropical architecture is to create a space that can circumvent these weather conditions. So by basically sloping the building and instead of it being vertically up, now you kind of slope it aside. You create this sheltered space on the ground floor. So this sheltered space on the ground floor then becomes what architects intended. They wanted it to become this new vibrant space that people can actually use because it's sheltered from the elements, sheltered from rain, sheltered from sun. And then when you look at the interior, it over time it becomes worn down, so you don't really see the architectural like grandness that it achieved to be compared to that day. So to critique it based on today's like standpoint versus what they wanted to achieve at that time, I don't think it's fair to do that. Yeah.
But once gold, forever golden. We can never pitch the past against the present, and we cannot ignore the contributions this building has made towards the architectural scene in Singapore. Neither can we discredit its revolution. Golden Mile will be conserved in a way where the main building's exterior remains, and a new 30-story tower will be uprooted in place of the old swimming pool and car park.
The design of the building is to bring people together and bond and have a vibrant community. But this design intention will impact people's private living space as well. So it's a double-edged sword. The reason why the designer or the architect behind GMC is so bold in expressing his ideas, I think one of the key reasons is because at that time, in post-independence days, we urgently need landmarks for people to remember Singapore.
Now, do you think that there will be another Golden Mile of the future generation?
GMC to me is more like a signal to Singaporeans that we have a brighter future. We are going to treat problems.
It really helped to sort of like inspire many of us to, especially in architecture school, to dream big in a way that it doesn't just think of a building as a building, but they had loftier goals of how they wanted people to live in the future.
When you look at GMC, you don't see it as an object. You see it as what are the principles that drove GMC and what are the intentions of GMC to the city. It meant a way of land optimization, it meant revitalizing city, it meant better use of resources, it meant certain vibrancy in the city.
โอเคสุดท้ายนี้นะคะน้องขอขอบคุณเพื่อนพี่แรงงานไทยทุกคนและก็ชาวสิงคโปร์ที่แล้วก็ผู้หญิงที่มาแต่งงานที่นี่นะคะที่มาอุดหนุนร้านน้องสมใจขอขอบคุณเราจะได้มีโอกาสมาเจอกันอีกแน่นอนนะคะยังไงอีกสักประมาณ 2-3 ปีไม่แน่อาจจะโกลเด้นไมล์อาจจะกลับมาเป็นเหมือนเดิมแต่ก็ยังไม่รู้แล้วแต่